Hello YouTube, Scamp the Wolf here, back with another video for your viewing pleasure. Well, we know that Linkin Park is coming out with Paper Cut, their greatest hits album, on April 12th, and it has a B-side from One More Light entitled Friendly Fire, which is pretty solid, I think. I'm just going to give that right off the bat. I think that song is pretty solid, so in honor of Linkin Park and that album coming out, I have finally decided to do a Linkin Park ranking of albums from their 7 albums that they have, from like 7 to 1. So I think it might be a little obvious, but you'll see. So anyway, let's get into it. Now, this one might not be at the bottom of everybody's list, but it is at mine because I think it's a fine album, but it's just not my favorite. This one, Living Things, like this one, I don't really remember much of it, to be like, and I listened to it when it came out, enjoyed it, and this album just isn't my favorite from Linkin Park. Of course, you have some good songs on this album. Everybody knows Burn It Down. Um, everybody knows like stuff like Lost in the Echo and stuff like that. But um, there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of mid for me, like on this album. And mid doesn't always mean like it's bad or anything. I just want to get that misconception thrown right out the window. Like if you say something's mid, it's mediocre. That's what it is. So yeah, like um yeah, there just isn't really a lot of stuff that's like mind blowing to me personally on Living Things. Like, and they do kind of like combine a lot of their sounds into like one, their like new metal ish side kind of, but it's more electronic or whatever, like more in a electronic rock kind of way or whatever, which is admirable. But yeah, I just don't remember a lot outside of the most popular tracks, of course, and there's tracks like Lies, Greed, Misery, Until It Breaks, and stuff like that. And even Roads Untraveled, that I think are pretty solid songs, to be honest. So yeah, Living Things is at my bottom. Now this one might get a little bit of heat, but I don't really care. I have One More Light above Living Things, and again, this one's fine, to be honest. I know a lot of people hate it because it's more pop or whatever. Like, I know that, but like the reason this is like above that is because like probably due to Chester passing away like 2 months, nearly 2 months after this album coming out, maybe. But I do think there is like one good song that really like puts this album above that, and that is the title track, "One More Light." Very clairvoyant kind of song for Chester, a little bit like the lyrics of that song are very like emotional or whatever. Like the song itself is very emotional, and a lot of fans cut onto that. But like other than that, like there's songs that I think are pretty solid, like Battle Symphony. That's a fine song, I think. Um, uh, Invisible, I think is fine. I think it's a pretty solid track. Like um, uh, Talking to Myself, I remember being okay. There's a lot of just okay songs on here. There are some full blown out goose eggs. Sorry for Now being one of them, and also Sharp Edges being one of them. Um, those are my two goose eggs on this album. I really think that those are like weak. I think Friendly Fire should have been on the album to replace one of those tracks, to be honest. But whatever. But yeah, One More Light. Not a great album by any means, but it's still like passable. I think everything from Linkin Park is passable in very different, like on very different levels. I think One More Light is definitely passable if you want more like electronics or whatever. If you want like a more pop sound, and they do it okay. So yeah, actually, I was gonna put this down here somewhere where it was. I like to do that. So yeah. Um, Next up, Hunting Party. This is my number 5 pick, and we're in the top 5 already. And yeah, this is lower because it's just like not as, again, like not as memorable as like other tracks. But I do find this better than One More Light for reasons. Um, this is like a heavier album or whatever, but not heavy in the same way as like new metal or anything like that. It's heavy because like there's punk-ish stuff on it, and there's punk stuff. There's like they try more heavier stuff on this album, and that's kind of like solid for them. Um, like I remember songs All for Nothing and Guilty All the Same, um, stuff like that. And Final Masquerade I think is my favorite song on the album, and also War's pretty good. Um, the rest of the album I just don't really remember that much. Even like Keys to the Kingdom, I don't really recall it as much. I know that there's a lot of like appearances from other artists on this album as well. Paige Hamilton of Helmet, Darren Malakian of System of a Down, Tom Morello of several bands, Rage Against the Machine and Audioslave being two of them to really like investigate. If you want to check out those bands, definitely do so. But yeah, The Hunting Party is a good album. Like, again, not mind blowing. I don't think Linkin Park, like in general, has made like in at least in 2010's era, except for one album that we'll get to, has made anything groundbreaking in my personal opinion. So Hunting Party is at number 5 on the list. Number 4 is Minutes to Midnight. Like again, like probably the weakest of their 2000s material in my opinion. It's not because they changed sounds or anything like that. It's just that there's some songs on here that don't really do much for me, to be honest. On here, there's only a couple songs like that on the album. Like I think like when it gets to like the more ending tracks on the album, like when you have songs, I guess like Valentine's Day maybe. I don't know. Like that song's kind of like I don't remember that song that much. And in between, I know Mike Shinoda sings on that one, but it's just always been kind of like it's okay. And the Little Things You Wait, that's kind of just again not one of my favorite tracks. But everybody knows tracks like Given Up, Bleed It Out, What I've Done, of course. Hands Held High, which is more political. I think this is a political album for them, and I do like what they tried on this album, but it is kind of like messy in some ways, but I definitely think that there is solid stuff. Given Up even like is pretty solid. The production is kind of rough compared to like other albums from Linkin Park. Like, and even though that's Rick Rubin producing it, like it's still not like the best production ever in the world that you're gonna hear. It is kind of just weird in some areas. I think the like ballads are pretty good. Leave out all the rest. They did prove on a lot of songs that they could do different styles really well, and it shows. So that's Minutes to Midnight, and we're gonna put that away. The next one is an iconic one, and again, it's heresy if I put this anywhere below the top 2, but we have Hybrid Theory, and the reason this is low as it is because I do find it kind of overrated, like a little bit. I do find it like, yeah, it established them and everything like that, but I don't really think that it's them at their best whatsoever. And also the songs are kind of overwrought, overplayed or whatever in the end, and Crawling being 2 of them that are very overplayed, very like I just don't really feel much from them. In the end, it's a good song, but it's just that. And then there's cuts that are like pretty good on here. Paper Cut, like Points of Authority, of course. Place for My Head, Forgotten, Pushing Me Away. Like a lot of this stuff is good. Definitely worth checking out. Paper Cut as well, lead opening song on the album. It's interesting to hear this album, knowing that Linkin Park wasn't nearly as big as they ended up being, but they ended up that way thanks to In the End, which was huge. And like when you like think about the year 2000 or whatever, and you think about like all that stuff. Like it's interesting to say the least. So yeah, I don't really have much to say about this album that a lot of people haven't said. So Hybrid Theory is my number 3 album. Now we're getting into the really good stuff from Linkin Park, and a lot of you were surprised. This is at number 2, A Thousand Suns. Definitely a political album for Linkin Park. Um, there's a lot of political stuff on this album, and there's a lot of like really experimental stuff as well, which is why a lot of people did not like this album when it came out. Although that has kind of since changed after time has passed or whatever. This is a very good album. Like this is a very solid album. Like I know there's a lot of instrumentals on here. There's a lot of interludes on here. For the most part, they do work, and I think the soundscapes more than make up for a lot of things. Like with the Requiem and the Radiance, those are excellent, excellent interludes. And then of course, like Bring in the Skies, When They Come For Me. I've loved those songs, whatever, for a while. I love Riches and Kings. That's a very hard-hitting one. The Catalyst is, of course, pretty good. Messenger, very emotive. Yeah, like for like 15 tracks with like maybe 5 or 6 interludes. I forget the total amount. This is a very good album. Very different for Linkin Park, and it works. This is probably their best experimental album that they've ever done. And now for the obvious one. This one's number 1 for me, Meteora. Of course, everybody thinks this is number 1, including me. I mean, there's some people that probably think Hybrid Theory is number 1, but a lot of people have been thinking Meteora is number 1, and for good reason, because I think every song on here, regardless of how much they're played or covered or whatever, I really think that, like, there's just a lot to like about this album. They did the nu metal thing a lot better than they did on Hybrid Theory, which was already good, and this did it to perfection. This kept nu metal in the limelight for a longer period of time than it should have been. Like, and it's easy to see because it connected with a lot of people, and they did it well. Like, some of my favorites, I'm just going to rattle off some of my favorites. Don't Stay, obviously, probably my favorite Linkin Park song. That could change. Of course, everybody knows Somewhere I Belong, Numb, Breaking the Habit even. Faint, how could I forget about Faint? There's also tracks like Figure 09 and From the Inside that I think are very underrated. Like, in the scheme of Linkin Park songs that don't get as much attention, because there's so many Linkin Park fans out there. Like, they probably, like, you probably heard these songs at some point, but I'm just saying, like, in the scheme of Linkin Park, not that they're, like, underrated necessarily, like, but, yeah, just is what it is. Like, Easier to Run is good, Hit the Floor is good, Nobody's Listening is kind of fun, Session, of course, which was in The Matrix Reloaded, great movie, and yeah, this is, like, enhanced CD, of course, very cool, I do want to get the deluxe edition, not, yeah, the 20th anniversary edition. Yeah, I do want to get that, but like the other one that came out when this, with the DVD, when this album came out. So, I do want to get that at some point, so stay tuned if I ever get that. So, yeah, this is Linkin Park with Meteora, a fantastic album, and that is it for my collection, for my ranking of Linkin Park, so tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. This is Scamp the Wolf, signing out. Take care.